All right, guys, it's really time for you guys to lock in
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
because it moves very fast and it moves very quiet. A lot of things that happen in this government, that happen in this country, because on last Monday, July 27th, the Trump Justice Department walked into the highest court in this country and they asked the Supreme Court for permission to change who gets to vote by mail in America, not the election, right? Not someday, right now before the midterms this November. And here's a part that should make you sit up at the center of this thing and like, what is this really all about?
What is this game?
Because a federal list of who counts as an eligible voter, and whoever ends up off that list for any reason, right or wrong, may not get a mail ballot at all. So this evening, we're going to really slow this down just a bit. Because when the government starts building lists of who's allowed to participate in democracy, whether it be Black folks have seen this movie before, and we have, and we know how it ends. And I guess it really operates under the guise of illegal immigration.
That's stupid. Use your common sense.
But nevertheless, here's what happened. Back on March 31st of this year, the president signed an executive order overhauling mail-in voting altogether. The order directs the federal government to build what they're calling a state citizenship list.
Wait, what?
Now, this state citizenship list is a roster of eligible voters, and it moves towards having the U.S. Postal Service deliver mail-in ballots, only to people who land on this particular list. We talked about this before.
What?
23 states and D.C., they sued the federal government, and it's written right there in the Constitution. The power to set the rules for federal elections belongs to the state and to Congress, and not to the president, because he has a pen and he's been signing hundreds, if not thousands, of executive orders. California's attorney general co-led this particular lawsuit, and the courts agreed, at least so far before they changed their mind. A federal appeals court upheld a ruling that blocked the order across nearly half the country. So this past Monday, the Justice Department went over their heads up and asked the Supreme Court to let the order take effect anyway. While the lawsuit keeps grinding on, the court gave those states until August 3rd to respond. Now, I really want you to pay attention to this particular language, because this is where the sleight of hand actually lives, in its filing. Okay, in its filing, the Justice Department told the Supreme Court that this executive order is really just a general policy guidelines, right? It is this sort of not trying to break constitutional law, not trying to overturn constitutional law, but it's more as a guidance policy.
Way!
They stress that Postal Service hasn't even finalized the regulations yet. In other words, it's basically he was telling the government and the Postal Service and the Attorney General and all these people trying to sue the federal government behind Trump's order to relax. There's really nothing to see here. It's just guidance. But family, ask yourself this. If it's just harmless guidance, why fight for this so hard to make it binding before November?
Why?
You don't run to the Supreme Court on an emergency basis over a suggestion, right? You're trying to change law. As a matter of fact, you're trying to violate the Constitution altogether. You do that when you want something in place before the votes get counted. That's the tension that the national media keeps skipping. One side reports election integrity, the other side reports voter suppression. But the actual document does something more specific than either headline will let you know. It moves towards a single federal list that decides who is real enough to get a ballot, and the list is only as honest as the people keeping it, right? Because they can keep anybody off the list and put anybody on the list when they control the list altogether.
How embarrassing.
Now, here's a bigger picture. Every time this country has built a system to verify who's legitimate, right? Boy, you crazy. The paperwork burden has landed heaviest on the same people. You already know what I'm about to say. Black voters, elderly voters, working folks who move for jobs, who move for different opportunities, who move for family causes, for whatever the reason may be. People who don't have a passport in the drawer or a birth certificate that matches every database perfectly. And I know We can get our ID cards. We can get our birth certificate. We can get our social security cards. We can get all of these paperwork if you are a U.S. citizen. I understand that. But a lot of times, a lot of us may not have it on hand, and we should be getting those things. And yes, it's your personal responsibility to have these things either be saved up on some sort of cloud drive, the hard copy certified from the federal government. We are in the due diligence of an adult. You should have these documents, these very sensitive, vital documents on hand. Someone's searching for your business right now. This is what they find. Slow dated or just not there. So they leave for someone else. Lova builds you a real website and the app to match in days, not months. So when they find you, they stay, they book. Built right, kept running. See yours free in 48 hours. Minute before you pay a thing. Lova.dev. Now, the voter roll purges and documentary proof of the citizenship rules have a long documented history of knocking eligible Americans off the rolls by mistake, and those mistakes don't fall evenly, by the way. Now, layer on mail voting specifically, mail and absentee ballots became a lifeline for a lot of people, shift workers who can't stand in a 4-hour line. Senior citizens, folks in counties where they close the polling places in our neighborhoods first. When you route every mail ballot through one federal eligibility list, you've created a single switch, and whoever controls that switch controls the door. That's not a prediction of fraud. It is a warning about power, because the danger isn't only what a list does on purpose. It's what a list does by accident when your name is spelled two different ways in two different government computers. Let's talk about the calendar, because the timing is the tell, is it not? The midterms are in November. The Department of Justice then asks for a slow, careful review. They filed an emergency application. The Supreme Court didn't schedule this for next spring. It ordered responses by August 3rd, August, September, November. Think about it. Everybody involved understands that whatever the court decides in the next few weeks for a national election, that's already closed. So again, today, August 3rd, right?
Damn.
And here's what makes that a blind spot. If you only watch conservative media, you heard the president is protecting the ballot. If you only watch liberal media, you heard another Trump power grab. What almost nobody told you plainly is the mechanism. A federal list tied to mail ballot delivery. That's the piece you actually need. And it's the piece that got buried under the shouting between the two parties, no less. Let me put this in a historical context, because this is not the first time this country has decided that some Americans have to prove themselves harder than others just to vote. And I get it. Illegal immigration, even legal immigrants to a certain degree, have a role to play in what President Trump is doing. But that doesn't mean that it won't affect other demographics who are citizens, by the way. But nevertheless, for 100 years after slavery, the tools were poll taxes, literacy tests, and understanding clauses, rules that look neutral on paper, but were designed to keep Black folks away from the ballot box. The genius of it was that nobody had to say the quiet part. You just built a process, made it complicated, and that the complications do discrimination for you. Everybody is waiting for people to call Black people the N-word.
Got him.
Everybody is waiting for people to go out on the street and be the next chug the building. Everybody is waiting for people to get in the side of their pickup trucks with shotguns and AR-15 and just mow down Black people altogether. No, the best white supremacy operates in systems and processes on the federal, state, and local level.
Oh, hell no.
The way that nobody can blatantly state that that's racist, that's discrimination, that's the system of white supremacy. No, the physical acts are from the lower tier of the white supremacists. The governmental systems is from the higher tier. They work in a more sophisticated manner, do they not? So we have to look at this very cleanly. We have to analyze it. That's why a list makes the hair on my neck stand up, ladies and gentlemen, because a list is a process, and a process can be aimed when the machinery of who gets a ballot gets pulled to the federal government level. And they run through one agency that you don't need a villain in charge of that's wearing a hood or a hood with a pointed cone head. You just need a database with your name entered wrong, a purge that runs a little too aggressive in the wrong zip codes, and a clock ticking down to election day. And notice who's in the room and who is not. 23 states and DC are in this particular courtroom filing.
Wait a minute.
The everyday voter, the grandmother in rural Mississippi, the third shift worker in Detroit, the college kid who just moved is not in that room.
Well, I don't know.
They will simply find out in November whether the balance shows up or not. That's the whole danger of doing this fast and quiet. By the time regular people feel it, the decision is already made. So let me show you something very quickly here. As we're showing, Trump asked SCOTUS to permit blocks on the mail-in ballots before the midterm.
I don't think so.
I think as American citizens, we need to know who can vote and who cannot vote, okay? So look at this. Who can and who cannot vote? Who can vote? You are a U.S. citizen. Some areas allow non-citizens, listen to this, to vote in local elections only, not on the federal level. But still, that should be wrong. If you're not a citizen, you should not be able to vote on any level, in my opinion, because we have different demographics. We have Asian folk, we have Hispanic folk, we have European folk, we have people from South America, we have people from Central America, we have people from Australia, we have people from all over the globe flocking to one neighborhood, one community, and they change the very dynamics of that entire neighborhood. And they're not even citizens, but they can change laws, they can change regulations, they can change guidance and policies, and that should be illegal because you are not a citizen of this country. If you want to change laws on any level, you should do it in the country that you derive from, or you become an American citizen, and that way those rights are afforded to you. Now, the U.S. living outside the United States, if you're a U.S. citizen, no matter where you live, you have the right to vote. A U.S. citizen who was born abroad and has never lived in the United States, but you are established by your parents, no less. Dual citizens living in the United States or abroad, and you meet your state's residency requirements. You are 18 years of age on or before election day, okay? Some states do allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 by election. Some states allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 by election day to vote in the primaries. And you are registered to vote by your state. North Dakota does not require voter registration. That should absolutely change. And here's the thing about the whole voter ID. If you're wondering if I'm for or against, I'm for voter ID. And I say believe because this is not yet law, because there's legal immigrants who can get the real ID that all 50 states, 5 territories, and DC actually have made law to have, right?
Oh my God!
Legal immigrants can get the real ID. Legal immigrants can get a social security number over here on a work visa, right? But what's the only document I'm thinking of that they may not have or should not have that will verify us as American citizens, and maybe some sort of digital security on the real ID that you can show? Your birth certificate. But did you know that illegal immigrants can get social security cards?
Huh? What?
They can get social security numbers. We're going to cover it. Now, who cannot vote? Non-citizens, including permanent legal residents, cannot vote in federal, state, and most local elections. Not all, because we just stated before that some legal immigrants can vote in local elections, okay? And believe me when I tell you this, a lot of people who are legal immigrants, they do all the research, so they know what neighborhoods, what areas, what regions to go in, so they can control the economics, they can control the politics in that area, even though they're not citizens of this country. And now you see the rest of this, but I really want to show you this Social Security criteria. Social Security numbers for non-citizens. Yes. So when we're talking about, hey, we want to make sure that all the citizens have Social Security cards, ladies and gentlemen, There's non-citizens who can get Social Security cards. It states right here, employers use a Social Security number to report your wages to the government to determine eligibility for Social Security benefits. You need a Social Security number to work, collect Social Security benefits, and receive certain government services. When I used to tell you guys years ago, right here on Black Logic, that a lot of these immigrants, whether they be legal or illegal, they come over here and they gain benefits from programs like TAF or CHIP or subsidy programs that derive under the Immigration Administration. So all of these things are true. We give a lot of benefits for people who are not even citizens of this country.
Oh my God!
Now, a lot of you may be turning your nose up at President Trump. In some regards, it can affect Black people. But here's my thing. We have, August? We have at least 3 months to get our paperwork in order. American citizens have at least 3 months to get their paperwork in order. We should not have people in this country who have the opportunity to vote in any level, whether it be local, state, or federal. So in my opinion, here's the things to watch. Watch the August 3rd deadline, which is today. Hopefully you've been watching the news. Watch whether the Supreme Court whether the Supreme Court grants the emergency request or leaves the block in place. If the court lets the order move even partially, watch which states rush to plug into that federal list and watch one's fighting and watch your own registration, not out of panic, because we don't do that, but out of preparation. You also need to check your status, confirm your address, know your state's mail ballot rules code, because the rules are literally being litigated as we speak, because the people who lose elections quietly are almost always the people who assume somebody else was watching the paperwork. So let me pull the full coverage map on this, because I think it's very important that the way we always do this, left, right, and center, because the omissions tell you as much as the reporting.
Oh, okay.
The right-leaning outlets are running hard with words like election integrity and citizenship verification. What they leave out is that there is no evidence of widespread non-citizenship voting to justify a federal ballot delivery list in the first place. Study after study has found it to be vanishing rare. So they're selling you a cure for a disease that barely even exists. The left-leaning outlets are running Trump power grab and threat to democracy, even though we live in a republic. What they leave out is the boring concrete mechanics, the United States Postal Service, the state citizenship list, the August 3rd deadline, the exact details a regular person needs to actually protect their vote. They give you the alarm without instructions. And the center, a lot of them are covering it as a dry process story. DOJ files emergency application like it's scheduling note instead of a fight over who gets to participate in the next election. Put all three together, and here's the picture no single outlet is handing you guys. A solution in search of a problem, aiming through a federal switch on a rush clock, weeks before a closed midterm. Today was the deadline. That's the story, unless they're still in session. I don't know.
Damn!
That's why we pull all sides, right, left, and center. So here is the biggest picture. This story isn't really about envelopes and postage stamps. It's about power. Who has it, who's trying to centralize it, who gets protected, and who ends up as a typo on a list they never get to see. A ballot you can't cast is a voice that doesn't get count. And a democracy, again, a republic, that only works for the people who can prove themselves twice, isn't a democracy. The reason why I bring up democracy, even though the Constitution states that we are in a republic, because it don't matter if you're left, right, or center. I keep hearing politicians talking about a damn democracy. And if they just read the Constitution for themselves like I did, very long documentation, it's a republic. But nevertheless, it's a gate. We're going to keep watching this all the way and see what really happens on August 4th, which is tomorrow, and beyond. Especially the parts that the national desk keeps skipping. Let's see if SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of these United States of America, changed their mind, because I noticed the reason why the Republican administration, the Trump administration, congresspersons who lean right, I understand why they place certain Supreme Court justices in place. Because at the end of the day, the Supreme Court justices are the ones who interpret the Constitution for us meager lower class people. They decide the interpretation of what the forefathers and the founding fathers actually meant. So at any given right, the Supreme Court of these United States of America, they could overturn, change, or deflect what the Constitution actually means. And if I pointed at least half of you, then that's just half the battle. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with somebody who needs to hear the truth behind all these bogus headlines.